Yeah, I'm Bird 365. 1 week until the NFL draft, and we'll continue to talk draft. We're going to get Adam Kaplan up here in the next 15 minutes or so from InsideTheBirds.com. Podcast radio show, also does work for Sirius XM's NFL radio network. We haven't had Adam on for a dog's age. Looking forward to talking with him again. I did the other week with Glenn Macnow on WIP, so it'll be good to catch up with Adam again. But before we get to the draft and Adam and everything, I do want to ask you about the brothers Johnson on the Philadelphia Eagles, Patrick and Kyron. Guys who have been added the last couple of years, been part of the roster. You and I were debating earlier about the wide receiver 3 and the importance of special teams. The Eagles special teams they weren't good last year. The year before, okay at best. The Johnson brothers are guys who do play on special teams. They're still holding their roster spots here in Philadelphia. Do either of these guys have a chance to contribute in any significant way to the Eagles this year, in your opinion, John?
Well, I think they'd like an upgrade at edge rusher, which is why we're talking about the Nolan Smiths of the world. You know, remember, we were talking about roles and backups and things like that, on the offense. Patrick Johnson is Hassan Reddick's backup, and, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah, if Hassan goes down, there's a little bit of a drop-off there. That's what you're telling me?
Yeah, that would. Now, he played more than I think, and maybe this is another shot than people realize because you didn't notice him that much. But he I'm just looking it up as we talk. Patrick Johnson, 232 snaps on the defensive side. So, he got upgraded.
That's a surprisingly large number. I would have definitely said under on that.
No, he played basically. He took Derek Barnett's rotational spot when Derek tore his ACL in week 1. So he was that fourth edge rusher instead of Derek Barnett. And to be honest, Derek would have played more than that. So that tells you he didn't play up to the level that the Eagles wanted and probably put more. They were really, really disciplined with Brandon Graham because he was coming off. So it probably put more on the plate of Josh Sweat and Hassan. Now nobody cared because Hassan was so good, and Josh might be the most underrated player on this team. He's a really good player. So, that's one of the reasons they want to get back to that 4-man rotation with effectiveness. And, he's, we're using this term too much, but he's just a guy. I don't see a lot more the upside. Now, you talk about Kyron Johnson. The Eagles drafted him to be a special teams player. Like, that was his reputation in college. He was this great special teams player. It didn't show up. Now, he was a 6th-round pick, so it's not like you're expecting that much. He barely played on defense, but he was supposed to be a core 4 guy. I always talk about, the Dave Bipp days when they would have the Chris Maragoses and Brian Brayman's and Najee Goods, the guys who were just good at special teams, and they don't do that anymore. Well, they tried to do it with Kyron Johnson. Didn't work. Maybe it does work. Maybe you just need some experience. But I would say that, that's his role. He's got to be a core 4 guy on special teams, and didn't see a lot of evidence of his reputation as a collegiate player in that phase last year.
And I'll give Patrick Johnson credit because, man, I didn't know he played as many snaps as you said. I guess he wasn't supplanted by Robert Quinn, the outstanding acquisition by Howie Roseman. We love you, but we got to point out the good with the bad. That 4th-round pick the Eagles won't be making this year how many snaps did Robert Quinn play?
Well, I'm glad you brought him up because I should have brought him up. That's another indication that, Patrick didn't perform at the level they wanted him to. That's why they went out and got Robert Quinn. and that didn't work out either. So that's just another indication that um, the Eagles need an edge rusher. So when people say, "Well, they have Hassan Reddick, they have Brandon Graham, they have Josh Sweat," yeah, they're all great players, but they want to come at you in waves, and
Right.
that other edge rushing position, the fourth one, is really important for this team, and that's why don't be surprised if it's Nolan Smith or Lucas Van Ness or somebody like that.
Could very well be their first overall pick of the draft. And Patrick Johnson did get a lot of snaps for not a whole heck of a lot of production, but I would have guessed Thunder because they went out and got Robert Quinn. And I thought, all right, well, there go his snaps. Well, Quinn did next to nothing. And yes, the Eagles.
Well, remember, Robert got hurt too. He had knee surgery and he missed a bunch of games. So, but he wasn't playing well either way. So,
right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but still waiting for his signing this offseason, correct?
Yeah.
He's still out there on the free agent market waiting to be scooped up by some team. I hope he doesn't wait too long. Yeah, they still need another edge guy. And I did throw that name out there. And if they go offensive line in the first round, John, if it's Paris Johnson, that's the selection at number 10, and they go, who knows where they go in the second round, but it's not edge again. Nick Herbig. He's
Herbie.
He's a talented enough player to go in the third round. Where the Eagles pick in the third round, which is I think 94. Where did it? Are their third round picks slotted in for compensatory picks?
Yeah, the compensatory picks are slotted.
They might be pushed back to 94. Well, there's 32, so it's 96. Yeah, so it's 94, I think, is their pick in the third round. He's a talented enough player to take there. Is he a fit for them? Is he going to be a good enough? He's a tweener, and I hate using that word, but sometimes it just stone cold fits, and I think it does here. He's not a natural edge guy. He's certainly not a linebacker, a little too big, but I did check the PFF grades on him, and he's thought to be a real good coverage guy. Does he, assuming that the defense is going to be very similar to the one last year, and you keep telling us this because that's what Nick Sirianni has hinted at, even though we haven't heard from the defensive coordinator yet. Is Herbig, younger Herbig, a guy who could fit for the Philadelphia Eagles if they don't get an edge in either of the first two rounds?
Probably not. From what you're just saying, and I think the Eagles are way too slavish to fit on the defensive side. I think they're much more malleable on offense. I really do. Defensively, it's like, yeah. I mean, to me, and we talked about this a little bit with Terrell Edmonds. He's got to play because he's the best guy they got. Figure it out. And they need a linebacker. And, if you're asking me, and it comes to that place in the draft, yeah, I wouldn't mind taking him. If you're asking them, they'll probably say, no, he doesn't fit what we do. And I don't like that. I don't like it.
I know that you've been well on record that they're overly married to the system, as am I. You maybe a little more so than me, but yeah, it is annoying, and I get it. The Eagles are going to dispense information when and how they want to, not when Eagle fans would like to know, and we like to give our slant on it, but we still don't even know what kind of defense they're going to play.
I know most people don't like the scheme. Let's be honest. I think we could agree on that. And
Philadelphia Eagle fans don't like a non-aggressive scheme. You're kidding me, John. Is that really the case?
Yeah. And I know everybody's holding out hope because they haven't talked to Sean Desai. Man, I hate to snatch hope from you, but again, Nick has been very, very honest about it. Sean's history tells you all you need to know. He's a big banjo guy. He's not all of a sudden coming in and saying
he coached under him. It's not even knew a guy who knew a guy. Oh no, he coached under the guy, so that's going to be the case.
That's what Gannon was. He knew a guy who knew a guy.
Right.
This is a guy who's with Bick. He's a disciple of Bick.
Direct disciple,
I don't know what people are hoping for, but you ain't getting it. It is what it is. And, Tommy brought up a good point about safeties and communication and Branch's football IQ. Communication's big. You see it all the time in the back end on this defense. When those guys don't communicate, it looks ugly. Super Bowl.
I was going to say,
communication.
Do we need to go any further than inside the 5 on 2 specific plays in the Super Bowl?
When you don't communicate on the back end in this defense, it looks ugly. Just put in that Minnesota tape from last year. Ugly. They didn't communicate all year. The Eagles were great at it all year. And all of a sudden they crapped the bed on the biggest stage, unfortunately, and didn't communicate. When you don't communicate in this defense in the secondary, it's a flipping disaster, Jody. It is a flipping disaster. That's one of the things I don't like about this defense, because there are, everybody gets younger, and especially with the Eagles now, they want to get cost effective. They want younger players. They want draft picks. They got to be on the field earlier. Guess what? Those guys don't have a lot of experience. Those are the ones that are going to make mental mistakes. They're going to have to learn from their mistakes, the growing pains, the startup costs we always talk about. The easiest thing for them to do is, all right, there's Jody McDonald. You got him, press coverage, man coverage, aggressive, everything likes. That's easy for young players. Point at somebody and say, that's your guy. What's difficult? No, this is cover 2. This is cover 4. This is cover 8. This is cover 2 invert. You gotta disguise pre-snap. You got to communicate. You got to communicate with Darius Slade. We saw what Josiah Scott on 3rd and 30. That was a communication breakdown.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You got to have all these signals between. It is a disaster, this defense, when the communication is bad on the back end.
Right. And it sounds like John and I are going glass half empty here. 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, 3rd and 30 conversion. They were the number 1 ranked defense pass in the NFL. So we can point out the breakdowns, and when they break down, they can be pretty damn ugly. They didn't break down all that much last year. You couldn't have been the number 1 passing defense in the NFL.
I said, of all the teams that played that defense, and there were a bunch of them in double digits in the NFL, they ran it the best.
Yep.
They were the best at it. They were the best at it. And I remind people, it wasn't good enough to win the Super Bowl, and it wasn't good enough for the fan base. So that's why I said from day one, I feel a little bit sorry for Sean Desai coming into this environment with these expectations. And by the way, he doesn't have Javon Hargrave. He doesn't have C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He doesn't have Marcus Epps. He doesn't have T.J. Edwards. He doesn't have Kaiser White. All of a sudden, you're putting him in this environment with Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds and Nicholas Morrow.
Right. And that's the thing that scares me about the Eagles defense as of right now. And we think they will address it in the draft coming up and upgrade. Both John and I are kind of hoping that Branch is sitting there at 30 when the Eagles pick, couldn't get that card up to the podium fast enough. If that's the case, yeah, the safety position right now is a crapshoot for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I know nobody's, well, maybe John and I are missing Marcus Epps as much as they should, but he was a damn stable player for the Philadelphia Eagles last year. And for my money, they haven't replaced him yet, but they still have the rest of the offseason and the draft. Speaking of the draft, that's what we're going to do with our next guest. Adam Kaplan's going to jump in here. I haven't had him on the show in a good long period of time. Looking forward to catching up with Adam Kaplan from InsideTheBirds.com, SiriusXM's NFL Radio. Adam Kaplan next on Birds 365.